see.
I need these working. I'm technically challenged, so my wife's helping me here.
I completely understand. I was going to try to do Google Meets for you, and I was like, you know what, man, Ron's a special guy. I don't want this trial and error to be on him. I started messing around with it, and I guess you got to pay to be able to record, the screen or whatever. And I was like, man, I'm going to wind up. Can you hear me?
I can hear. I'm trying to get them on here because I know it's.
Again.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Is that good camera wise?
Yeah. It's a good gobbler you got back there.
Hold on a second here.
Do you have it on face? Is it like a face tracking thing or something?
Yeah, it's moving around a little bit. Yeah.
There we go.
I guess you're far enough away. I don't need these suckers on. I'll leave them on anyway. I'm good. I think so. I think we're good.
There we go. Well, Mr. Ron, how you doing, sir?
I'm good. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. Well, thank you for the meeting a little bit sooner than what we planned.
Yes,
I appreciate the flexibility and just actually being able to come on and talk for a little bit.
Absolutely.
I know it's a lot to ask. We're all busy. We got families, we got jobs, and just life in general. So anytime I get a man's to be able to come on here and share a little bit about hunting and more importantly about their walk with the Lord, it's
absolutely
it means a lot to me.
Yes, sir.
And so I don't want to take too much of your time. I'll be respectful of it, but I do appreciate you coming on here, honestly.
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, and I love that hat you got there.
Yeah, it's pretty special.
Yeah.
It's been a pretty good conversation piece, obviously talking about the outdoors first of all, but explaining what the letters stand for, and again, being able to share testimony, share Christ with others. So it's been a pretty cool conversation piece. So
yep. And that's some of my main goal was, when I started ToknowHim Outdoors was honestly, I grew up in the South. I didn't grow up a believer, but I grew up in the South and around Jesus and religion and stuff like that. And but being in the outdoor community, most of your good old boys down here in the Bible Belt, they have some form of faith and or at least hold to something. And whenever I gave my life to the Lord, it was a couple of years later on, he was like, man, I want you to use your passion that you love of the outdoors and bring it together and just find different men to talk about it and hear about their story and share it, because men need to hear from men,
Absolutely.
I believe that. And so you were one that I don't know how I met you, or not met. We've not met. We're meeting now on virtual, but somehow I met you through Facebook.
I think originally there was supposed to be some sort of deer roundup, and then through some Tennessee turkey folks, we connected that way, and then I just started jumping on your YouTube and your podcast, and then it just went from there.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely enjoyed, seeing your interaction and stuff on Facebook and some of the things that you share. And before I start rambling too much, I want you just to introduce yourself to the people and just sort of what, who Ron is, and we'll just see where conversation leads.
Sure. Yeah. So again, Ron Howard, born and raised southeastern Michigan. Again, I'm not, wasn't born into a Christian household, wasn't raised in church. I've been married to my beautiful wife, Michelle, for going on 33 years.
Oh, man.
We've got 3 amazing boys, Tyler, Logan, and Seth. They range from 32 down to 22 with one in the middle there. So there's a little bit of a age gap between the oldest and youngest. Through those boys, they blessed us with 6 amazing grandchildren. We've got 3 girls and 3 boys currently. I started hunting in Michigan as soon as you were old enough to hunt in Michigan, pretty much just whitetail. It wasn't until I became an adult, came home from the service, that I dove into archery. Didn't know anybody who bow hunted, started bow hunting. Had an old high school buddy I reconnected with, got into squirrel hunting, and then Once I got on the fire department, I had a buddy that he was into upland birds, so he started doing some pheasant hunting with him, with dog. Never did anything like that, so that was super exciting.
Mm.
So, like I said, I'm a United States Navy vet. I spent 2 years in the Navy. Spent almost half my enlistment in the ocean, and came home from there. Went to college. Plan was to take over Dad's business. That didn't turn out, so my wife nudged me towards one of my other dreams, which was to become a firefighter. So I spent just over 20 years in the fire service as a
Wow.
firefighter paramedic. You know, worked through that, through COVID, and through some smaller government, local government issues within the fire department. So kind of got burned out with that. I retired a little bit early in 2020.
Mm.
And then we took a little bit of time off, moved to Tennessee for a little bit, moved back for family. Currently working a company that runs organs around for Gift of Life. So I drive all over the country doing that.
Wow.
But other than that, that's me. Now I dove into traditional archery just recently, so that's my new passion. Trying to take game with a recurve. So that's
Yeah.
kind of who I am and where I'm at.
Man, it's funny you talking about. I actually got it right here. Traditional archery. Get this thing out. I got my very first one. A guy sent me this recurve bow, and so I've started shooting with it a little bit, but that's a whole nother animal.
It's a whole other animal. I tell you what, though, it's addicting. It's really addicting. I took my first deer, not this patch season, the season prior. Long story. I took this deer. I shot it. It was last light. I was sitting about 8-10 feet off the ground. It was 17 yards broadside. I shot that thing and I couldn't find it. It was raining. It was dark. I looked all over for it that night. Looked all day the next day. I took a day off, and then the fourth day, something was telling me to hunt another spot on this property. And I went over there, hunted that stand, and as soon as the sun came up, it was snowing at this point. I just saw a big mound of white and some birds flying off it. And I got my binoculars out, saw a little rack. So I ended up finding it 4 days later, tagged the head and kept the head. I did a little Euro mount, but that was my first one. Still waiting. I'm going to try turkey with it a little bit this year, and then the plan is head back up to Ontario this spring and try to take a black bear with it. So
yeah, man, I'm just trying to get a turkey with a shotgun, and you over here trying to get one with a recurve.
Hey, man, come on to Tennessee when we're down there, man. And we'll get you on one.
Yeah. I'm actually going up to Tennessee. That's originally where I'm from.
Okay.
And we live in Georgia now, but I'll be going up to Tennessee opening weekend to hunt with my buddy up there. And so I'm pretty excited about that. He's got a lot of birds on camera, and so it's looking pretty promising. But man, thank you for your service, both in the Navy and as a firefighter. Man, that's awesome. And so it really means something to have someone like you on here that served in that capacity and serving the public, too. I got a lot of friends that are firefighters, and one of them actually served in the Navy as well. And now he's part of a church plant in Portland, Oregon,
Awesome.
So a couple of years ago, our church sent them out. Yeah.
Those are exciting.
Yeah. So they're doing the Lord's work out there. But man, it's been a minute since I've done the hunter story, and that's what I got you on here for. And I don't know if I ever really explained to you sort of what it is. And it's nothing scripted, but honestly, it's just having guys like yourself on here that I know that have, faith in Christ, and just to talk a couple of hunting stories like you were sharing with that traditional archery buck there, but also to roll in to just your testimony of your faith in Jesus. And so couple of questions that I typically had was for the hunter story would be, of all of your hunting experiences, I know you got a lot of them. What would be the one that you probably could think about that just stood out the most to you?
Man, normally I would say that would be a very hard question to ask, because I've raised 3 boys in the woods, and each one of them were unique. Each one of their first deer was very special.
Yeah.
But as soon as you ask me that question, there's one memory that's really solidified as being the best because it brings them all together. It's a really cool story. So I grew up hunting pretty much public land. Just Dad knew somebody that had a cabin somewhere, didn't really have permission to hunt their property. So I grew up pretty much hunting public land. got hired on the fire department January of 2020. That next hunting season, a group of guys that hunted got to know guys on the department. They invited me onto this lease, southeastern Michigan, south central Michigan, where I mean, typically, I don't know if you're familiar with like Jackson County, Hillsdale, but that's where a lot of the big deer are. And it was kind of typically in that area, but a little bit further west. I got on this lease, um, ag lease, soybean, corn, and alfalfa. So really a dream come true getting on this, about 400 or 500 acres.
Yeah.
My kids were still too young to hunt, but I had always taken my boys. Anybody wants to get their kids in the hunt, I say just take them.
Yeah.
Don't worry about their feet getting cold and them wanting to quit. Don't worry about them making too much noise. And the biggest way to get them in, or take them small game, man. They can run around and be noisy. So my kids grew up hunting private land, right? So they had the privilege of doing that. So each one of them got old enough, and we would set up a double set, and we would hunt, and they all got opportunities. All three of them got an opportunity. Their very first sit in Michigan youth hunt. But it all came together. My youngest boy, he was aging out of the youth hunt in Michigan. He was 16 years old, going on 17. It was his last year to youth hunt. And this kid has shown so much resilience. He started hunting when he was 8 because Michigan lifted the age limit. So he shot his first deer at 8. He shot a doe. And this kid, year in and year out, was passing deer, not by anything I was instilling into him. He just wanted to shoot a buck, right? So he's passing. So this is his last year. He's aging out. It's starting to rain. It's light. It's getting the last light. I throw the camera in the bag, and he gets up to get down. He stretches, and he's like, get your camera, Dad. So I scramble, get my camera out of the bag, and he shoots this 12-pointer, right? And that's not really the highlight that I'm going to talk about. So he shoots this deer. He's aging out, right? Well, his oldest brother, his very first youth hunt, he got his first buck on his first sit. So now we're coming full circle. But the memory that stands out is that weekend we're sitting in this tree, and I had a double set, and it's perfect. It's a pinch point, a little old pipeline between two crop fields, and they just typically they walk right in front of us. Well, we're sitting there. My son's asking. There's a tree in front of us that's got screw and pegs in it. So my son's asking about this tree. We've hunted there. They grew up hunting this area. So I was able to tell him a story about this tree with the pegs in it. That's the tree that my very first son shot his very first deer on his very first youth hunt.
Oh man!
From that tree with a screw and peg. So I'm able to share that story with my son, and it just, for me, I hope the memories are as good for them, but for me, it just came full circle to where all the way through 3 boys hunting in that same general area, and my son was asking about that tree, share that story with them, and he's able to take, that just a really nice Michigan buck on his very last youth hunt, so that brought it full circle for me, you know what I mean? So that if I have to say my best, I've got a lot of them, like you said, but that's probably my best hunting memory that I could share with you.
Man, that's awesome. And I love what you said earlier, or at the beginning. You said, your kids, just get them out there and let them hunt. And I got 4 girls, and I got a little boy on the way.
Oh boy.
And so, yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. And one thing that I've had to learn, because my dad took me hunting, and I remember freezing to death, and really not liking it, early on. And so what I've done with my girls, or what I've tried to do with my girls, is let them hunt their hunt, and what I mean by that is, like, man, when they get cold or time to go or bored, obviously I really want to shoot a deer with them, and we have, but also too, it's not the end of the world if it's like, all right, we got to pack up and go, try to hunt those areas where your chances are high, but also if they're, if my 6-year-old gets cold, because it's cold, because we're not in a shooting house with, buddy heaters or nothing like that. Don't make it for them to not enjoy it, is what I'm trying to get at. And so I think that's very important, being in the South, sports are king down here. And, and I grew up playing sports, like every sport you could think of. And, I also didn't want to try to push my kids into living out my dream, Right. And so I have those walls up, even in the hunting aspect of, I'm a hunter. I love it, man. It is what drives me other than the Lord. Absolutely. Now. But also too, man, my girls, they may not like it. and
Yeah.
so just
Yeah.
sort of coming to realm with that. But
It's
that's
wild.
awesome.
You mentioned sports. So the middle boy and my younger boy played football, right?
Mm,
And again, me and my wife are athletes. We played, and at some points in our life, we're like, oh man, why didn't our kids play sports? But we
yeah.
never pushed it out. So
Hmm.
my middle boy and my youngest boy played football, and the season coincided with Michigan's youth hunt, right? That
Mm,
youth hunt weekend. And they have all season hunt, but if you want to hunt that youth hunt weekend, and I always like, hey, you guys want to pick one or the other, football or the
mm,
youth weekend, or a lot of times or every season, what we did is we would my truck would be packed with hunting clothes. We'd go to the football game. We'd go right from the field to the hunting field,
hmm.
and they would play the game, and then they would go get a hunt in too. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's with kids. You were talking sports, hunting's the same thing. And you see social media all the time. I've got this such and such year old kid. How do I, you know, just take them,
Yeah.
just take them,
Yeah.
and make them enjoy it.
Yeah.
Make it be about your time together. We're talking about
Absolutely.
Christ. Share Christ with them.
Mm,
Look at God's creation. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, don't pressure them. Don't make them hate it. Because essentially we want them to do it with us. Or,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
You
awesome.
want to share that bonding moment with them. Like you said, whenever you're
Absolutely.
hunting, you have such a great moment you're in God's creation to talk about the creator. They're witnessing things come to life that
Absolutely.
most people that definitely that don't hunt, but most people that they don't see what we get to see in the sunrises and the birds coming, waking up and the dew and all this. Like it's man, it's just magical out there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
every time I am in a stand, I just think of Romans 1 where it's talking about evidence in his creation,
Oh,
every
yeah.
time, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but that's awesome, man. And so another part of this story, and really the most important part, is just talking about your faith. And I tell
Sure.
everybody, I said, hey, you can get as detailed as you want, but you don't have to. Obviously,
Sure.
like if you don't want to share things, I know some people have extremely dark past that they were in, and when Christ saved them, hey, you share whatever you want to.
Sure.
Um,
Yep.
but the story of Ron Howard, maybe a little bit before you knew Christ, you said just like me, you didn't grow up in church or in faith or anything. What did that look like? And then as you come to faith in Christ and sort of your life now, what's changed in your life?
Sure. Sure. How much time do we have?
I have no idea. We're on Zoom, so
So, and it's funny because me and Michelle, my wife, were just talking about this the other day. We'll go for rides and road trips, and when we talk, and with Holy Week, and she's getting
Mhm.
me hooked into the Chosen. We were talking about this, and so my testimony, to me lately, the more I think about it, it's a little unique because my testimony, and maybe some other folks do too, but my testimony evolves, it changes, right? Because the older I get, and I look back and I reflect on my life, I can see where Christ was using circumstances or people that maybe at that time I didn't realize or didn't care
Yeah.
or didn't respect the fact or even see really what Christ was trying to do throughout my life. So let me take you back. So, mom and dad at home had your typical mom and dad at home, had three brothers. They raised four of us starting out in a two-bedroom home in a suburb just outside the city of Detroit. So dad owned his own business, auto repair and towing company. So, middle class folks. Um, I don't want to say non-believers or that it was never talked about because I do believe everybody in my household at least believes.
Mhm.
But we weren't a Christian family. We weren't going to church together. Matter of fact, I don't ever remember other than your typical, holiday
Yeah. Yeah.
family church events like most people.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
how
didn't
we
grow
were.
up.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in church, right? I didn't have people telling me about Christ. Um, but when I talk about how I see that my testimony changes as I get older, I can see where Christ has planted people in my life along the way, right?
Mm.
And whether I realize that then or I realize it more now. So I really think the first person that Christ really used in my life was one of my aunts. It was my dad's oldest sister. She lived near us. She was widowed. She raised all her kids in a lot of circumstances. She raised her grandkids, but she was always talking about Jesus.
Mm.
She went to this church up the street, and I can't say for certain, but I'm sure it was her who encouraged me or invited me to church for the first time. So Christ, through the family, put an aunt in my life, and she was like a grandmother to me, because I lost my grandparents at a young age. One of my grandfathers really when my dad was 19, but the other ones when I was a young age. So I didn't have that either. I didn't have, a lot of people have, if it's not their folks, it's their grandparents that talk to them about Christ. So I credit this aunt, right? So I would get up Sunday mornings and I'd put my little 3-piece suit on, my clip-on tie, and I'd walk 2 blocks to the local Free Methodist church, right? And I remember being that kid, and I was so excited to go to church, right? And I'd go there faithfully. And one of the reasons I was excited is the next person that I can point out or highlight was my Sunday school teacher. And her name was Pam. And she just made Sunday school so exciting. I was excited to go. She did this. I remember she did this. I don't know if it was over whatever period of time, but it was an attendance challenge, right? And I remember she would put these little feet, like and looking back, she would, the footprints, right? But he'd put feet for our attendance, and I won that, right? And I won this Bible, and I don't know how many things I have from 5 years ago still, but this Bible was awarded to me for attendance in Sunday school by Pam, April 11th, 1982.
Man.
I was 9 years old. I was going on 10 years old when I got this Bible. Again, I didn't know what it meant. Probably didn't read it much, but I kept it, because Pam poured into me. Yeah. No matter what. And she doesn't.
Praise the Lord for Pam.
The funny thing is, for me, the more I realize these people throughout my life, and it's kind of like being a firefighter, you don't see the outcome. They don't see the reward. They plant the seed. I had a pastor tell me one time, and I actually just posted it on your face. It's our job to plant the seed. Yeah. We don't have to sit around and watch. Yes, we feed it. We can help water it, but we don't sit around and watch it. So these people that have poured into me, they don't see the outcome. That's why I'm going to speak these people as I give my testimony. So Pam was that next person. She really poured into me, and it made a difference because I kept coming back to church in those ages where I didn't have people talking to me about Christ. Typical preteen teenager that most of us are, because it wasn't a strong influence outside of church anywhere else in my life. Friends I was hanging out with, family that weren't churched. So I started running with the wrong crowd, like a lot of us do. And not to get too deep, there's certain areas I was hanging around people I shouldn't be, doing things I shouldn't be doing. And so fast forward, without getting too in detail, it got to the point where my dad, and this is probably the best thing my dad could have ever done. My dad didn't know how to parent me. I don't fault my parents for that. They just didn't know how to parent me. I was a hard child. I was getting in trouble, but they just didn't know how to parent me. They tried everything a parent could try. They went to the meetings. They did the spankings. They did the groundings. They did the taking stuff away. But my dad was at his wit's end at this point in my life, and he put me in his car and he drove me down to that church. Now I had started getting into the teen room a little bit, but I was the world and the people I was hanging out with was pulling harder. My dad walked me into that church, walked me to the youth pastor's office, said, "He's yours. I can't do it anymore." He said the next step is probably going to be juvenile or a boys home. He goes, I can't do it. I don't know what to do. So that man's name is Kevin West. And to this day, he is probably the most influential male person that I've had in my life, even still to this day.
Praise the Lord.
He took me into his office, and he wasn't easy on me. I had to report to him. If I remember correctly, I was probably reporting to him weekly outside of, the youth group. He made me do essays. I had to write things I like to do, football. I had to write essays to him. He was hard on me, right? Yeah. But rightfully so, he with love. And so I got back more involved in the youth group, but I was still being pulled over here, and then youth camp rolled around. I've never been to youth camp. I didn't know what church camp was. I was in church, but I didn't know what all that was. My parents didn't send me, So youth camp rolled around, and we had started doing activities with a couple other local churches, same denomination, other Free Methodist churches. There were 2 other ones, one in another city specifically. We started doing a lot of stuff with. So youth camp rolled around, and we piled up in 3 buses. We drove out to 72 hours, man, to get to Estes Park, Colorado. That's where this youth camp was. But Mom, Dad, I want to go to youth camp. They forked out the money they sent me. Thank the Lord for that. So we go to this youth camp, and there's like thousands of teenagers from all over the place. One of the coolest experiences I've ever had in my life. Now, I can't tell you, I'm not the guy that can tell you the date and time where I was when I got saved. There's a couple instances where I know at least that I
the
prayed,
moment. Yeah.
that that someone spoke to me. But this time, this specific youth camp, man, it was just life changing, man. Met a bunch of teenagers. By the time we got there, we knew really intimately. We knew the other teenagers from those other churches that we had traveled with. So I had some really good buddies by the time I got there, plus the ones that came from my youth group. Had a great week, man. Had a great week. Met some amazing teenagers. So God started planting now, not just my aunt and Pam and adults. He started planting kids my age in my life that weren't like the kids that I had been hanging out with. And that's really what I needed, right?
Yeah.
I needed to see there were people my age that were different than the people I was hanging out with. So God started working that out, making these relationships with these teenagers that were a little bit closer to the Lord than I was. So we come back from that youth camp, and Kevin West, my youth pastor, he comes into the youth group and he's like, me and my wife, we've been praying. The Lord's leading us. We're leaving the youth group. Man, wow. I'm devastated.
Yeah.
And he starts talking about, which was interesting too, because not being raised in church, you don't hear these stories. He starts talking about how, another church had made him an offer, and him and his wife had been praying, and he's allowing the Lord to work through his life and direct them where they should go. So this other church youth group that we had been doing some functions with, they went to this youth camp with us. They asked him to come over there to the school and be their youth pastor, their Bible teacher, and their basketball coach. Well, at this point, I'd never heard of what a private school. I never heard what private school was.
Yeah.
Never. If I did, I probably wouldn't want to go to one.
Yeah.
I mean, my graduating class from the school I left was about 500. But he starts talking about leaving and going over here. I go straight home. My mom and dad, I want to go to private school. I thought they'd be floored. I thought there'd be some resistance. They're like, okay. So they're sending me to this private school. So I go from like a 3-story high school, graduating class of about 500, to one hallway carpeted with 7 classrooms, about 18 people in my graduating class. Talk about a culture change.
Yeah.
But again, so God's preparing me. He's putting people in my path all along the way. And then I get to this school and I meet more kids my age, more kids. Now there's kids that are like me, because it's just a small private school. And that's what parents did. They took their kids out of these public schools from all these different cities. But he's also putting people in my life that love me through Christ. Yeah. They're pouring into me. They're seeing that I'm kind of a trouble child, but they're still, and I look back at these people and I think like the biggest thing that stands out to me is one, people investing in me that don't really know me. And then they get to know me, they keep investing in me, and they keep pouring into me when others along the way just threw their towel. And I understand that there are folks that maybe might not be as strong, maybe not as patient, whatever the case may be. But I'm talking about those people that just kept pouring into me, not throwing in that towel. So as he does that, now I got a student group my age. And I'll tell you what, God worked something out. When I never moved, I stayed in the same house I lived in, and the school was a few cities over. The minute I switched schools, it was at the beginning of 10th grade, and I was so unsure about switching. I was still going to practice for JV football at the public school. But when I switched schools, I lost contact almost with all the people from that public school. Whether they thought I moved, whether they thought they didn't want to be involved with me because of whatever. Literally, I talk to people now, and they were like, "You never moved?" No, I never moved out of that house. I stayed in the house. I just went to a different school. So God really started separating this and then giving me this again. So he's pouring into me. Now that school provided faculty members, students, other teachers, and not to name them all, but God just started just putting people in my path all along the way that I needed. And then to fast forward a little bit, one of the the most important people that he put in my life. And it's kind of a funny story. So when I went to that youth camp, I met a buddy of mine named Jim. He was at the school. He became one of my buddies through that private school. And those fall sports start pretty much before the school day starts, but you're still at the school and you're practicing and stuff. And female sports are crossing over the male sports. So Jim's like, "Hey, I got this girl I want you to meet." All right, cool. I don't know a whole lot of girls here yet. So he walks me over to this girl. He's, hey, I want you to meet. This is Michelle. Michelle, this is Ron. Well, Michelle, who is now Michelle Howard, was one of the first girls I really met at the school. But the funny thing is, when he introduces us, he goes into a conversation. He's like, so how was your first date with Scott? So I met my wife the day after she starts dating this guy that she ends up dating for 2 years. But again, you see God in that, because God prepared us for where we're at now, because we became like best friends 10th, 11th, half of 12th grade. We didn't start dating until the end of our senior year. And we just really became best friends. So we already had that out of the way. We were best friends. She knew who I was. She knew my family. Unfortunately, her family knew me really well. So it was kind of awkward when we did start dating. But, but again,
boy, that story of my wife and me. Woo.
Oh man, we could have another podcast about that. But so God was preparing us, and again, you don't really realize that in the moment. You look back. So we started dating our senior year, and then we got married when I came home from boot camp. We can get to that, but so I guess in a nutshell, that's really my testimony. And again, like I said, it just evolved for me over the years.
Yeah.
And the more I get older, and the more I can look back, and I've really made it a point when I see these people, because like I said earlier, a lot of people don't get to see the fruit at the end, right? And another unique story. So that Kevin West, that youth pastor, one year, me and my wife and my family were down in Hilton Head. And I popped Facebook open real quick, and my youth pastor and his family were in Hilton. So I sent him a message, and then me and Michelle went over and we sat and had coffee with him for over an hour. And I was really able to share kind of this with him and say, listen, man, told him the story, because he knew me. I mean, he knew who I was. He knew my whole story. But I just wanted him to know, like, it wasn't in vain, right? That him taking those steps that God had called him to do. And then he was able to share with me. He's like, man, you don't understand. Me and Marion was his wife. She goes, we were fresh out of Bible college. We didn't know what we were doing. We were just following the Lord's lead, man. Yeah. And how that worked out. So, I've taken the opportunity when I can to find, whether it's a teacher, a student that maybe I wronged, or somebody that poured into me over the years that hey, man, Christ works. The seed was watered. Now, it's not perfect. It hasn't always been perfect. That. I've stumbled in the 52 years I've been on this earth. I still do. But I you just try to put Christ at the center of everything you do, the best you can. And when that doesn't happen, and you realize that, you just go through the motions and, make it right, and so that's kind of my testimony in a nutshell. We've been in and out of numerous churches just between moving and finding churches that we feel comfortable. And
man, I tell you, moving is, when we moved from Tennessee to Georgia, I got saved not too long before we were moving down to Georgia. And that was one of my biggest fears, was leaving the church that I just got saved in, and seeing what I'd seen, through YouTube, and you just always hear about, bad churches or, bad raps and stuff. And I'm like, man, we're going to move away from the church that, just helped lead me really to the Lord. And I couldn't imagine moving, as much now, and trying to find a solid local body that, has the authority on God's word, that preaches from the Bible, that believes it to be true, and to stands on it, and to speak truth in love, to have that weight and that balance there. It's hard, man. It really is. And sadly, we as a universal church, the body of Christ, we've done a bad job, of being unified across the world, really, not just our nation. But man, I can relate to you talking about just people pouring and investing into your life. I look back at just the small things from my childhood to a guy named Kevin Avens. Like you said, you needed people where you were, those kids, or, as you grew older. Kevin was a guy that, I grew up as a real bad alcoholic and dealing with fighting and stuff like that. And Hearing
Sounds
from,
familiar.
hearing from church people, typically I just thought, hey, those are good people, and the Lord could never love someone like me. Not everything that I've done. And Kevin was that guy that did some pretty bad things in his past, and the Lord used him and his testimony to show me, like, man, he loves us all. And like, man, he is willing that if you just lay it down and humble yourself and know that there's nothing you can do, and you give your life to him, if you do what Romans 10:9 says, if you believe in your heart and confess that Jesus is Lord, and you'll be saved, and he was the one that God used to reach me. And so I'm thankful that, Pam and Kevin and all those people you were talking about in your life.
Absolutely.
And to see you now taking what and planting seeds in others, because most of the time we don't see the reward and the fruit of it. And if we do, if we get to lead someone to and get to watch them come to faith in Jesus, it's probably because somebody's been working for years, in their life, and we just get to see the fruit of it come, and
and see that's the beauty of it, though, right? So, it's we don't know how long it could take, right? A seed could grow in 30 days, 90 days. I just planted this past October. I planted 4 different species of pumpkin. Well, they all had a different a mature date, right? And that's the same thing. You just keep pouring. You just keep pouring. You just keep pouring. Eventually, that seed will grow, right? And that's the beauty of all these people I mentioned. And then to bring that all together for me, and if there's anybody listening that maybe you're feeling like this now, or maybe God has used people and you don't realize that, man, don't take that for granted, because what he's done for me, and I've been guilty or lazy or whatever you want to call it as a Christian, like we always are, but what it's done for me is realize that he's also prepared me to be that person. Right? Don't don't pack it all in and keep it to myself. Now I need to be that person in somebody's life when I have that opportunity, when the Lord leads. And that's the hardest thing you mentioned. That's one of the hardest things about, like, can God use me? And I was like that for years. Can God use Ron Howard from Lincoln Park, Michigan, that was a little hoodlum? Can God use you know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But then you realize we're the ones God wants to use. God wants to use everybody, right? Because there's a people group for all of us to reach, right? And that's why we share our testimonies. As I hope more people come on here, and if anybody's listening that's a little bit nervous, encourage, because it is a little difficult or challenging at times to talk about our lives and to give our testimony. Some people don't even know how to give their testimony. But it's in these testimonies that it helps others make those realizations, I think.
Yeah. Hey, Ron, if you don't mind, if you have time, this thing just kicked off that it's about to kick us off. Can I send you another link? We come back to where we're at right now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let me do that. I'm going to stop it, and I'm going to send a link to you real quick to hop back on, because I can't stand when we're just talking and rolling and Zoom cuts you off. So I think I'm just going to have to pay for it. I'm going to quit being cheap. But all right. Well, if you just want to pick up, we're talking about seeds and just planting them and watching them, and the years invested and stuff, and what that looks like and how it can look differently, and how God can use, like you were saying, God can use other people, and he wants to. He just wants to use willing people. That's obedient to. That's why he left us here. Whenever I first come to faith and become a Christian, I was like, man, why don't we just get raptured up out of here? Get us going. But he quickly showed me in his word, it was because we needed to lead other people to Christ, and that's, he left us here with a commission, the Great Commission: go ye unto all the nations, and so, man, that was good. But as right now in your life, you say you are back planted in with, I'm assuming, just another church. You moved back to Michigan, you in with another church, or what's your life looking like right now currently?
Well, it's complicated. This was another one of those moves where we didn't really have a church home to come to. I moved to an area a little outside of where we lived. So we moved to Tennessee. That was going to be our forever home. We moved down there, found a really amazing church to plant in, and I think we jumped the gun and moved back. And of course, it was for our kids.
Yeah.
Our oldest boy and our youngest boy. We came back and did some family stuff for about 3 years. But we want to get back down to Tennessee. That's where we want to finish.
Where'd you move at in Tennessee? I think we talked.
We lived in Grandview, so just east of
on Signal Mountain.
Crossville. yeah, near Signal Mountain.
Yeah,
come on. You from there?
I'm from Signal Mountain. Yeah.
Oh boy, there we go.
Yeah, and so technically a Red Bank area, but we lived on the Squatchy side of Signal.
That's where our heart is. So when we came back, we didn't and I mentioned earlier, moving a lot, trying different churches. And it's a battle, right? Because you got your flesh, your flesh, what we think church should look like. And that's not a bad thing. But as long as it lines up with doctrine and kind of what you're looking for in a church, where there's room to grow, there's a whole lot of things, and it could be different from me to you. But all the things that I wanted in a church. So we visited a few here, really couldn't find anything. So her sister goes to a really good church, but it's if I was to make it my church home, I'd almost move a little bit closer. It's a little bit of a drive, which the sacrifice is worth it. We feel comfortable there. I feel like we've grown since we've been attending there, but we always refer to as Tina's church, right? So not our church. So so currently we don't have a church home per se. We just feel drawn back to the Crossville area. I mean, we just that's where we are. We're actually going down there for Easter. We're meeting up with my brother. My brother's stationed at Fort Campbell.
Okay,
he's in the Army. He's a chaplain in the Army, so he might be another guy worth having on here. But
I'd love to.
We're meeting with them down there. We're actually staying at a cabin in Cumberland Mountain State Park, and then going to visit. He's looking at a house there, and we're going to get a couple pieces of property. So but no, I don't have a church home. So it's. And I don't know if you've ever been without a church home since you've been saved, but it's difficult.
Yeah, it is, and I hope, and anyone listening to this, I'm not insinuating that church is how you're saved or anything like that, or being. There's times where, we got friends right now that's left the church that they were at for years due to personal things going on, and they've felt led to leave that body, and they're now searching for a body now. And they're in that stage of, trying to find a church that aligns doctrinally with what they say in scripture. They're meeting with pastors and hearing what their beliefs are and stuff like that. And so, church or attendance to church is not what saves you. Now, once we're Christians, like we're called to fellowship and worship with other believers. But
absolutely,
I hope I didn't make it sound like
no,
like that was anything. So I know that can be people can get real touchy with that, and you really got to be loving when discussing, because most people are saying you don't got to go to church for the wrong reasons. I don't question. Absolutely. I don't question you when you're looking because you're moving.
Absolutely, yeah.
But no, that's awesome, man. So your boys, they're one of them's almost my age. I'm 34. He said one's 32.
Yeah, 32 years old is my oldest boy.
And so are they still around you in the area?
So the oldest boy lives probably within the hour. Okay. My youngest lives with me, and then our middle boy, he's married with two of our grandbabies down in Florida. He's in like the Clearwater area, Gulf side of Florida. So
that's awesome.
It's challenging, but we try to get down there a lot. My wife goes down there a little bit more than me. She'll fly down, and then I'll drive down, or sometimes I'll accompany her. But we try to get down there quite a bit. So
So if I know we're on our second round of video here now, but to be respectful for your time, anyone listening to here that say they may be struggling with, sharing their testimony, or maybe even just reading right now, we're good at making busyness a lot in our schedule, right? We can get very busy, definitely as men, as working men, that it's hard to make time sometime. So So what would you say as an encouragement to those that, may fear or know maybe not what to say in their testimony, or maybe to just encourage them in their reading? What's something that you would leave them with, as we sort of start wrapping up here?
Sure. Well, let's talk about your testimony. Everybody has one, right?
Yep.
Good, bad, or indifferent. Everybody has a testimony, and it doesn't need to be elaborate.
Yep.
It doesn't need to be over the top. Your testimony is just, man, basically, what's your background? What's your relationship with Christ? How'd that start? But really, just giving it. Find somebody that you trust, that you can just share it with. It's important to tell our testimony. It really is, because there's going to be somebody listening that is in that lane, right? So I would say just give it, man. Don't overthink it. Don't think that it's got to be, hey, I heard Joe over here give his, man. Mine's not. Your testimony isn't like his. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
My testimony is different from everybody else, and I could probably tell it 3 different ways if I gave it a couple more times. So I would just encourage people to just share it. Just share it. If you got to start small with somebody you know and trust, just give your testimony. As far as reading, man, I struggle with that all the time. Yeah. We all do, right? It's just like working out. Monday I'm going to start. I'll get up Monday morning and I'll jog Monday morning, and we're sitting in the front of the TV at night.
Yeah.
So with reading, and here's what I'm starting to do, because I really want to. And I don't want to just read. I'm not saying that's bad. I don't want your listeners. We should just read the Bible through a year. All that stuff's good to do. I want to learn and know what I'm reading. I'm 52 years old, and I should have been doing this a long time ago. But lately, I want to break down the chapter. Yeah. Who wrote it? Who was he writing to? How does that apply to my life? If you want to do Bible through the year, there's so many different ways to do it. You can do it with your own Bible, jump around. You can get a plan. You can get a chronological Bible. But the biggest thing with reading, just like your testimony, just start. Just start. I had somebody tell me that one time. Just start reading it. Mm-hmm. Pray before you read it. Yeah. Pray before you read it. Don't just pick it up and read it. Pray before you read it. What do we pray for? Well, God, please give me the understanding of what I'm about to read. Apply it to my life. Help me to understand what I'm reading. Help me to use it to witness and give my testimony to other people. So just start reading it. Yep. And then if it's difficult for you to just read through it, find a plan. Like I said, I'm going to find. I just saw one the other day. It's a daily journaling type of a reading, which I'm good because I like to write. I like to jot. My mind's all over the place. So if I'm mid reading, I'll write something down. But it breaks down. Like I said, it's going to tell me the chapter, who wrote it, who was they writing to, and there's little things that are going to pop up that. So again, just start reading. Yeah. You can't go wrong, and make sure, whether it's your testimony, whether it's reading, whether you want to talk to somebody about Christ, we need to be praying, right? Because that's really
power in it.
There's power in prayer, and that's what's going to guide us in those other areas. Like, I can't just pick this up and read it. Yeah, God will probably speak to me, but read it and throw it down. Yeah. Well, I need to be in prayer about what I'm reading.
And I promise you, if you're praying to be in His will and read His Word and praying to give you boldness to share your testimony, He's going to answer that prayer. If you lining yourself under His will, that's what He wants you to do. Yeah. And but yeah, man, that's awesome. And like you said, with the testimony, just doing it. Another thing that I would add to it that I've seen, like you said, men come from different, and women come from different aspects of life, and every testimony, because they're like, oh man, mine's not as crazy as yours was. I didn't go to jail and stuff like that. And it's like, dude, every testimony is radical. You are a sinner saved by grace. You are someone undeserving, just like I was someone undeserving. That's radical. And God does not need us to fabricate some crazy story. He just wants you to tell it like it is. And I always go back to, the blind man. After he received his sight, these people are like, well, was it really Jesus, or what'd he do? And what happened? He's like, look, I was blind. And now I see. If that's all you got to say is, look, I was lost and now I'm saved. Yeah. Amen. You just did it. Yeah.
It's crazy. And like you said, everybody's got a testimony, right? And it's crazy because we were deep into a church one time as a family. We spent probably 8 to 10 years in this church raising our family. And one of the pastor's wives, she came to us one time, me and my brother, because we have similar past, drinking, not in church kind of thing. And she was weeping. This girl was raised in church. Her husband's a pastor. She was weeping because she's like, I don't have a testimony. I don't have a testimony. I'll trade you any day you want. That's like, listen, we can trade. You don't want my testimony, but you do have a testimony.
Yep.
Your testimony is unique to you, and your testimony can help somebody. So if there's anybody listening that thinks you don't have a testimony, whether you're raised in church, maybe you don't think you've ever done anything that bad, you've known Christ all your life, you've got a testimony. Yeah. I've got a buddy at work that I worked with at the firehouse. My age, never touched alcohol. That's a testimony.
Yeah.
So everybody's got a testimony, and everybody, good or bad, might envy that other person's testimony, but don't, because yours is unique to you, and somebody needs to hear it.
Absolutely.
So if you're listening and you think you don't have one, you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a testimony. Even like you said, the people that are raised in church, and what's interesting is more and more I've talked to people, definitely in the Bible Belt where everyone was in church, or a lot of times their testimony is so cool that they'll think they won't have a testimony, but you'll see where they were going to church, they were doing all the church things. Their dad was a pastor, their grandpa was a pastor, and they'll sit there and say that they came to a point where maybe, ashamedly, their parents were even saying, hey, no, yeah, you're saved. But they got to a point in their life where they were doing all the church things, and that they realized that, I never in my heart confessed Jesus as Lord. Yeah. And it's like, man, there's a lot of people that play church that's not saved, and so that testimony of the realization and the recognition of, man, have I, like you said, you don't got to remember the time stamp on when you give your life to the Lord, but is there that moment of where you said, man, I'm a sinner that separates me from a holy and righteous God. And God says, if I just believe in his gospel and the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and I confess that he is Lord, man, I'm saved. Yeah. Have you done that? And it's like, so many people think their testimony is not good. And man, dude, you've been saved. It's amazing. Yeah. It is amazing. So,
absolutely.
Man, Ron, I know your wife's home. I appreciate your time.
Hey man, anytime, man. I love this.
Yeah, I will definitely have you back on. It's something, this hunter story. I've done a few of them and sort of got busy with life, and I'm sort of ramping them back up. And I may even start reaching out to guys that I've had on to talk about certain topics, or, or something relating to their reading or a hunting story and stuff like that. And, but I honestly, man, it's been a blessing to hear your testimony.
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. It's a blessing knowing that I have a brother all the way up in Michigan.
Yeah.
Even though I think you're a State fan.
Well, yeah. Well, it's kind of by default. It's kind of by default, really. And that goes back to my testimony a little bit. So I had a buddy graduate high school. He went to State, and I used to tell people I attended Michigan State on the weekends, but and then my little brother's, he's a U of M fan. So it's been kind of like this little rivalry.
Smart man out there.
Yeah. I should have picked the winning team. I know.
It's funny. Me being in the South, SEC, everything,
Oh, yeah.
It's funny that I'm a huge Michigan fan, and most of the people, they're like, man, how are you a Michigan fan?
How'd that come about?
And I'm like, man, Braylon Edwards. I grew up playing sports. I was a wide receiver in football all through school. And man, I loved, and we grew up poor. We didn't have cable. We had 3, 9, and 12 at the house. And every Saturday, every Saturday, well, at least during football season, Michigan was playing at noon almost all the time, and I just started watching him play, and man, I loved watching him play some football.
Yeah, he was something to watch.
And so I just hung around it. I think I was in 6th grade when he was like a freshman and at U of M. And I just kept on watching them and went through the Rich Rodriguez and the Brady Hoke era and the dark ages of losing to App State, all that good stuff.
It's funny. You're down there. You're a Michigan fan. When I, being a transplant, I had to I had to become an SEC fan, right? So yeah, so whatever.
I almost
I like watching football. I don't
Oh,
really
yeah.
care. If it's a
Yeah.
good team, I like to watch it.
Yeah.
You know, I was excited when Tennessee almost had that undefeated season.
Mhm.
You know, but you know, it's yeah, whatever. It is what it is. I just like to watch good football.
Yeah, it is. And man, March Madness has been fun. We'll
Oh
see
man, some
if
good
my
games.
boys
That Duke
continue.
game. Ooh, that Duke game.
Yeah,
What?
that was wild. That was a wild finish. I jumped out of my couch on that, and I'm not even a fan of either one of them.
Yeah, I mean either. Oh, well, it seems like a lot of people like to see Duke lose, though. So, so sorry if anybody's listening.
Yeah.
Mean to offend you.
Man. Well, Ron, dude, it's like I said, a privilege to have you on here. I'll get all this chopped up and we'll put it on the podcast, on the YouTube channel. Good. And so let everybody know here where they can find you, or if you want to. I think you do a thing. So if you want to drop.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously Ron Howard, Facebook, there's going to be a lot of Ron Howards on there. It's just not the rich actor guy, the guy with the long beard with the ugly face. So you can find me on Facebook, Ron Howard, Instagram, and then I run with some folks. We have a show on YouTube and on Carbon TV. It's called Crimson Trail. If you like watching hunting stories and you want to check us out, go like, subscribe, throw a comment down, and share. So Crimson Trail.
Absolutely. I actually watched the episode of, I think it was Victor with his recurve turkey or traditional turkey. I think I just did it.
Yeah. He also he just had a film in Film Fest, Full Draw Film Fest, where he took a black bear with his dad's recurve. It's an amazing story if you want to go check that one out.
Wow. Is it on YouTube too?
Yeah. We just we just run around, try to enjoy God's creation and capture moments and share them with folks. That's all we're about. You know, campfires and telling stories with the camera.
Good deal. Well, Ron, I appreciate you, man. And everyone, I'll drop the links if you don't mind. Well, I could actually find them and copy them in on the links. And so I'll post them in the show notes and everything. But Ron, you have a good one. And
awesome.
I appreciate you, man.
All right.
See you, buddy.
Thank you. Yep.